Got a rotted out brake line on one of my Jeeps. Not surprising, it's 30 years old. One thing I like about this is it's one of the vehicles you can still work on, even though it seems like you're working on them all the time. You're still able to fix them relatively easily compared to the new stuff. It's all computerized and dealership only repair. And you know, a lot of people say, well, you know, this wouldn't it be easier just to, you know, call a wrecker and have somebody else fix the problem. It's like, yeah, you know, it would be easier, but you know, it's not always about easier. You know, if we take the easy way out all the time, you know, we forget how to take care of ourselves and, you know, fix things and, you know, do for ourselves. I got a brake line that popped. The problem is what happened. I replaced the front brake lines, back brake lines, and because now the main line going from the portion of the valve back to the rear axle is now basically original equipment and weakest link in the chain. As soon as I hit the brakes really hard, I popped a hole in it. Now, don't get me wrong, any idiot can pull a brake line out of an old 1990 Jeep, you know, replace it and then pump the brakes and be on their way. So I'm going to replace from the portion of valve back, and then that'll be completely new. And that's what happens a lot of times when you replace a brake line or if you make one repair. You know, or maybe they can't. Then, I guess as they say, 9 becomes 10, so the next weak spot becomes vulnerable and that pops. And then eventually you replace pretty much every brake line on the vehicle. I don't know, I guess maybe I'm kind of off on a rant, but I think that's a big part of what's wrong with the world today. You know, everybody's so used to having everything done for them. You know, it's like, oh, there's an app for that. You know, why pull out a map and compass? I'll just GPS it. Why look at a map? Why would you want to read a map? You know, all I can do is look at my phone. At least that's been my experience. Same goes with leaf springs. If you replace a leaf spring on one side, the other one becomes so weak it breaks. A lot of times. Not always, but maybe I'm giving people too much credit. I don't know. It's not even the fact they can't do it. It's the idea no one wants to. Anyway, I'm going to try to get this thing broke free without it breaking. Hopefully I'll be able to, but worst case scenario, if I have to, I'll replace the portion of valve and the 2 lines going to that. Eventually, it'll all be brand new. You know, therein lies the problem. Technology has just made everything so easy, and it's getting worse. It's getting easier. I had an Instagram little interaction with a guy earlier about, you know, why there goes another Jeep just like mine, actually. That's all I see down here is Jeeps. You know, we were talking earlier about, you know, how, you know, the world is so idiot-proof. You know, you gotta protect people from themselves. You know, you gotta put directions on the hot coffee in plastic bags, you know, so they don't put the bag over the kid's head, and they turn around and do it anyway. You know, don't put your kids in a cooler. You shouldn't do that. You know, well, yeah, okay, I agree, but you know, do we have to be told not to put children in coolers and shut the lid? I don't know. I guess so. Well, there's that end. You're going to follow that back to the rear axle, and this actually appears still pretty solid, but I'm just going to replace it anyway, right from point A to point B. So, you know, every once in a while, you know, you got to take a step back and say, you know, geez, could I handle that? Could I handle that situation myself? Could I do for myself? Maybe. You know, and odds are, maybe you could. I don't know if I'm going to get so lucky on this one. I hit it with WD-40, but we'll see. It's probably not even the right size. That might be 7/16. It is. Okay. That is, I believe, 9/16. In any case, I might grab that with a pair of vice grips. When someone says, oh, wouldn't it be easier to do this? Or, you know, maybe you ought to just do that. Or, you know, why would you build? Just buy it all put together and, you know, save the time and enjoy yourself. You know, enjoy myself. Doing what? Seeing the end result of what someone else did. You know, ride the coattails of someone else's idea. And that is 7/16, not ½ inch. So, actually, no, that's going to take vice grips to get it out of there. Good God, man. I mean, isn't that what we do, you know? I don't know. It's getting ridiculous. I mean, people, no one can do anything for themselves anymore. Everybody, you know, everybody's got a nice, comfortable spot on that big old comfortable couch, just, you know, riding it out. Well, as I suspected, the rust, it's a good thing I am replacing this because the rust inside that inverted flare nut turned out to be a little more serious than I thought. I couldn't get it with a wrench, so I'm going to have to get it with my vice grips and channel locks, but no worries. I say everybody, there's a few exceptions, but there seems to be an ongoing trend of, you know, just less and less. It seems that less and less these days people are able to do things for themselves. So we take our DOT brake fluid and fill each front and back. And then what you do is you got to get underneath there and crack the bleeder screws on the wheel cylinders and calipers. I mean, you know, if your car breaks down over in India, what are you going to do? Are you going to call AAA? I don't think so. And have somebody inside pumping the brakes, and when they get pressure, they hold down. You crack the bleeder screw, fluid, air comes out, tighten it back up, they pump it again, and you keep doing that until you don't get any air out of the brake lines. So, let's go ahead and do that. It baffles, you know, it's discouraging, almost depressing. Okay, pump it up. Does it feel like a pedal yet? Now it does. Okay, hold it down, and now what I'm going to do is I want you to hold it down. You're going to feel some release in the pedal, but you hold that pedal down until I tell you to pump again, okay? Okay. Okay, hold down. To see the direction people are going in, I guess, as a culture. Oh yeah, that was a lot of air there. Did you feel it?
No, not really.
Okay, hold on. It's okay. Pump it up. Hold down.
Yeah, I felt it.
Okay. That's because that was all air. Now we get all the air out. It's going to top it off and it should do it. Oh yeah, barely lost any that time. Seems to be running better, huh? I don't know how they feel about a couple of aristocrats living next door, but